take us back to 2014 when you launched this apps without code. What was your vision for it, and how have you realized it? Has it been better, worse? Walk
Yeah.
us through.
Yeah. Well, I can sort of talk to you in general about my interest in being in technology, because we were talking about travel just now. Like being in technology, having a job in tech, being an entrepreneur in tech has enabled me to have a life where I have the flexibility to be able to up and go, and where I've been running remote companies for 6 years now. So when COVID hit, that was sort of a normal thing for me and my team. But really, that the me being interested in tech happened accidentally when I was in school. When I was in college, I went to school in New York, and I was planning to work in finance because that's what everybody else around me was doing, and I thought I was supposed to. That was what you're supposed to do. And I ended up getting a job and an internship actually when I was in school at Google. So I was going to go work in finance. I got this random, I sort of applied on a whim, like there's no way I'm going to get this internship, but I'm going to apply anyway and see what happens. And I got it. And at the time, Google had tried to buy Groupon, and the deal didn't go through. And so they're like, you know, we're going to do our own thing. And so they launched this product called Google Offers, which is a direct competitor to Groupon. And that was my first job in tech. And at the time, like I was not thinking about being an entrepreneur. That was not the plan. I was going to like climb a corporate ladder. And that was sort of what the plan was to do. And I worked at Google for a while. I then went to work at Foursquare in New York, who sort of invented the check-in where you are in a particular location. And then I also worked at Microsoft for a while. And when I was at Microsoft, Microsoft was a big change from a cultural perspective from those other tech companies that I had worked at. It was a little bit more old school. There was lots of bureaucracy. My boss was frustrating. Just like I was having a typical experience of what people have when they're in a job that's frustrating. And I'm a generally creative person. Like I like to make things and do things. And I wanted to have a lot of impact on customers and products that you're building. And there was just so much bureaucracy and so much, just like it was so hard to get a lot of things done. And I'm sure lots of folks who are listening like resonate with that about like experiences at their own jobs. And so at first, I just wanted to create a side hustle, like a side project to give me more creative freedom and something that was my own and that would sort of like balance out my sanity at this job that was really frustrating at the time. So I sort of looked around at what I could do and what kinds of cool projects I could create. I wasn't really thinking about it as entrepreneurship. It was more of like a side project at the time. And I decided that I really liked art. I've always really liked art, painting, photography, etc. And I was just starting to like buy some of my first pieces of art for my apartment at the time. And I ended up building a company that helped people find artwork. So it ultimately ended up being an app. We built an app and an algorithm that matched people to artwork. When it first launched, it was not an app, it was more of a service. And then we built it into an app. But that was my first entry point into not just tech, but tech entrepreneurship and building my own thing and generating my own money and my own revenue with technology.
So, how did that turn into this?
Yeah.
And what's the trajectory? Because you
Yeah.
seem very happy. Seems like you're doing very well, Tara. It looks like
Yeah.
you're successful.
I like how you say that, Karen. Yeah. So what happened was I was blogging about my journey of building apps, not being a tech person, right? Like, although I had worked in tech, I'm not a coder. I had never built an app before. Like, I had never done any of those things. I worked on the business side of those tech companies. And so I was blogging about my journey building apps without knowing how to code at all, using this new kind of software that's available where essentially like you drag, drop, point, click, just like you would make like a PowerPoint presentation. You drag what you want onto the page. And then you logically tell the app what to do in English. Like if the user clicks the button, then log them in. Like it literally says that in an English sentence. And I was like, oh, okay, I think I can do this. And so I was blogging about my journey building apps that way. I did a TEDx talk on building apps without code. And I had a bunch of people contacting me saying, oh my gosh, can you teach me how to build apps too? And they were largely what I call like tech underdogs, women, people of color, just people who you don't often see in tech, who are like, oh my gosh, I've never seen someone who looks like you doing this, or who has locks too doing this, or whatever it was. I think that was exciting for a lot of folks. And at first, my answer was no, I don't have time. I'm literally trying to run my own apps in my own company. And I kept getting like bombarded with emails of people asking for help, who were saying, I already, like, I can't afford to hire someone to build it for me. I don't know if you know this, but like it costs like $20,000 and up to hire someone to
Yeah,
build an app for you. It's
I
so
do know.
expensive. Okay, so you do know about this. Yes. Okay, good. Have you had, like, how have you encountered that?
So I have a Party Lincoln app, which was a
Yeah.
nightmare to begin with, because the first two or three people who said they could build it and had already paid them
Yes.
didn't do it. And so it
Yeah.
was a guest on my show during the, I was like, can you do this? And he was like, yeah, I can only do the one for the Apple, for the iPhone. I
Uh-huh.
can't do the Android, but
Android.
I'll
Yeah.
build that and you got to find somebody. So we ended up piecing that together. But I was like, wow, yeah,
Yes.
it was a
So
lot.
people were sending me messages like that, and they're like, I've had a headache of experience. I either like already went through it, or I know how bad it can get and how hard it can get. So like I don't even want to go into that. And I don't have multiple years to learn how to code. Like I'm not trying to like learn a whole new skill set to learn how to code. And like I'm not sure, and I don't really have like a bunch of people in my network who can build it for me. Like, what do I do? Can you show me how you're doing it yourself? And so I finally was like, okay, I need to help some folks. I decided to help 5 people build their apps. We did a class of 5 people. I helped them launch their apps and app ideas, and really businesses around the apps too, because building the app is not that useful if you don't have a business and a business model around it. And so help them launch that. I opened it up again and there were 70 people. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is a whole school. So now I run a school, which is Apps Without Code, where we teach people how to build their own apps. The majority of folks who we serve are women, people of color, or tech underdogs, people who are not the typical person that you see in Silicon Valley. And what I get to help people do is take something that they already know something about, maybe something they do for work, something they do for their hobby, some idea that they have, and turn it into a revenue generating piece of technology that they can monetize.
Apps, apps without coding, excuse me, apps without code training.com. You go
Yes,
there, right?
that's
And
right.
at apps without code on the Twitters.
Yeah.
Now, you're also funding businesses.
Yeah. So this is something newer that I've started working on this past year and some change, where I'm acquiring businesses. So I've started also buying and scaling software businesses, mainly acquiring, less so than like investing, mainly like buying majority stake in. And sometimes the founders will stay on and be partners in that way. And other times I'm buying it outright.
What's the last business that you bought and or acquired, and why?
Okay, great. So most recently, I bought a company called Copycat, and what it does is it's for advertisers, people who run ads online, and it writes the advertisement for them. And it's actually technology that will like write your messaging. You can also write other things like emails and other marketing material, but primarily we focused it on writing advertisements, and so it writes your ads for you.
How'd you even find that company? Was it pitched to you? And then what did what about it made you say, I want to acquire this?
Yeah. So my background before I started as an entrepreneur was in marketing. So in general, I'm interested in marketing services and tools and those sorts of things. But I ended up, so I largely am looking at marketing companies, things that make technology that makes marketing easier for small businesses is usually where I focus. And so I look at all kinds of places on the internet. There's a site called producthunt.com where people post cool apps
I've
and
seen that.
projects that they're working on. There's all kinds of places. And so my team and I look at where people are posting things, and where people are building cool pieces of technology. So now I'm not only helping people build their own apps, but occasionally we're looking at acquiring other companies too.
And why did you want to do this?
Yeah.
We're talking with Tara Reed. You can follow her at Tara, Tara Reed, REED _ on Twitter. Apps Without Code is the company. What led you to doing that? Because that's a whole, you're taking on more, it could be more of a headache. You could be diluting, your energy because we have a finite amount of energy. Why would you do this?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So when I first started working on my business, I remember working with a friend and like writing down what I wanted my end goal to be. And for me, I generally like I'm intellectually curious and playful and like to learn things. And the goal that I wrote down for myself was that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, to give myself the space and the freedom to like tinker around with and to create new things. Like that's what I wanted to give myself the space for. And at the beginning, I had space and capacity to do one or two businesses, and that was max. Now I've really carved out something where I have sort of extra profit at the end of the day. And I think about what do I want to spend that on? And there's all sorts of things that you can do with extra cash, even that's extra, little tiny bit of extra disposable income you have from your paycheck, right? You can invest it in stocks, which are public companies. You can invest it in private companies like I'm doing, in startups. And so for me, I just happen to know a lot about private companies now. I've started to sort of studied them and what works and doesn't work. And so instead of putting all of my money in the stock market, for example, I also buy private companies. And this is a thing that wealthy white folks do all the time. Right? Like all the time, this model of investing in private companies. In fact, there's been a lot of regulations recently around making it more accessible for regular people to be able to invest in private companies, because before you could only invest in the stock market, but you couldn't also invest in private companies. When I say private companies, I mean just like startups, right, that aren't yet on the stock market. And so it's another sort of avenue of wealth creation. It means that I don't have to start from scratch anymore from building something. I get to sort of leverage capital and knowledge that I already have.
Who taught you? So did you come from a household or background? Tell me about your people.
Yeah, great. Okay. My parents did not teach me this. I try really hard to talk to them about it now. But I think there is some like lines to tread there. But for me, it's also like as I learn stuff and learn about how people create businesses, create wealth, like I want to make sure that my family hears it too. Right. So the line to tread there is where you want to talk with your family about like their financial planning and making sure the whole family has what they want set up. And my mom's like, girl, leave me alone, get out of my business, right? But I do work really hard talking with my family about this stuff. I would say that my family has not taught me most of this. My family has always thought about and taught me about money in a way and my relationship with money. So when I was growing up, um, my parents, probably starting like middle school, made a rule that they were not going to give me any money, like allowance or anything like that. And instead, I needed to, if I wanted money, I needed to find a chore that there was demand for and negotiate for why I'm the one who should be the one to do that chore. So, for example, if it's like sweeping the stairs, my dad would be like, I could do that myself. I don't really value you doing that much. And I'd be like, well, what about me washing the car? And he's like, well, yeah, that would take a lot of work. All right, go for that. And then I would negotiate for the price. If it was something that was ongoing, like doing the dishes, then I could like draft a contract and put it up on the wall with the
Oh,
price on
wow.
it.
So they
And
did
then I would
teach you
have to
some
write an
things.
invoice to get my money. So
Okay. So they taught you they did teach you some things,
they did.
Tara.
They did. So that kind of thing, they definitely taught me in terms of knowing my value and negotiating for my value. I think I learned that from that. The fact that you could even negotiate at all. Like, I think that there are lots of people who don't even like see what they bring to the world as something that they can negotiate for and advocate for at all. Right. And so like those sorts of things I absolutely learned from my family.